In college, I spent my summers as a counselor at an environmental education camp, and I taught lessons each week on the forest, on the field, on water, and we spent time studying trees so we could tell the difference between a red maple tree and a sugar maple tree. You can see in the picture there that the sugar maple tree on the right has sort of a U shape there in the edge of the leaf, and the red maple has more of a pointed triangle, and you can always remember that because sugar has a U in it, and so it's got that rounded part there. See? You're going to learn something today. I taught about the finding insects in the field. We explored the water to learn the difference between a dragonfly nymph and a mayfly nymph. And you can see the one with 3 long tails at the end there. That's the mayfly nymph, and you know it because May has 3 letters, and dragonfly has way more than 3. So you can know when you go looking with a microscope in the waters of upstate New York which one is which. I spent my weeks leading hikes and canoe trips, guiding night hikes, and basically teaching and taking 12 to 14-year-olds with me everywhere I went through the Adirondacks of upstate New York. Now, while my goal, as stated on my job description, was to combine environmental education, sportsman education, and outdoor recreation into an adventurous experience, I considered my job to be that of helping these young people to come to love our world. Because I believe that in order to care for it, you have to first like it. And if not just like it, you really have to love it. And so I encouraged these young people, and 12 to 14-year-olds, if you've met them, they are not always enthusiastic about things. And I encouraged them from the very beginning of the week to interrupt me. I said, interrupt me from whatever we are doing, whatever I am saying, wherever we are going, if you see or hear something cool. And they did. They would stop us in the middle of a walk to point out a broad-winged hawk flying under the canopy of the tree. They would interrupt us to point out the coolest insect they had ever seen crawling along a branch. They would interrupt to point out squirrels racing through the tree branches. They would interrupt to point out a bald eagle soaring in the sky above. They would interrupt as they darted off the trail to capture a toad to bring it back so we could all look closely. They would interrupt as they saw a loon gliding across the lake. And each time I was interrupted, I knew that I was instilling a little more love in these young people, a little more love for God's creation, that hopefully would turn them into adults who were mindful about the footprint they were leaving on the earth, mindful about the amount of resources they consumed, mindful about the amount of trash they generated. I knew that I was helping these young people to really heed Dr. Seuss's urging in his book, The Lorax, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, it's not going to get better. It's not. So while I worked at this very secular camp, I worked for the state of New York, and nary a word could be spoken about God in this setting, I knew that this was ministry. I was instilling a love of creation which perhaps would connect these young people with our Creator and the divine around us. For far too long, people of faith have interpreted Genesis 1:26. You know this passage. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over." And we have interpreted that to mean that we can do whatever we want, because we have dominion over. And for far too long as people of faith, we have failed to read Job 12. But ask the animals, and they will teach you. The birds of the air, they will tell you. The plants of the earth, they will teach you. The fish of the earth will declare to you. We have failed as people of faith to take seriously our responsibility to care for God's creation, God's earth, and to treat it as precious. In the Gospel of John, we hear Jesus giving an illustration on his mission with the people. And in our usual hearing, we hear Jesus say, "I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me." And in the story version that Susan read for us just a minute ago, we hear Jesus say, "I am the good caretaker." Jesus knows us, and we know Jesus, and we can trust Jesus to care for us as a shepherd cares for sheep. Now, to take this and to stretch it just a little bit, I would say that the same is true for us and the earth, that we should know the earth and we should be caretakers of it. In the same way that we should know children and care for them, and the least and the lonely and know them and care for them, and the hungry and the sad and know them and care for them. And as I said, in order to care for something, we must first know it. We must first love it. And so in order to do that, we have to spend some time there. We have to spend some time in our world, in nature. Now, I'm not saying you have to go off to the most remote place and hike for days and days to get to the most untouched space that you can find. No. I mean, if you want to do that, great. Take some pictures, tell me about it. But you can enjoy the bird hopping along your fence. You can appreciate that spot at the end of the sidewalk, as Shel Silverstein says in his poem, where the grass starts to grow. You can enjoy the little things when you look out the window. And those little things can cause us to begin to love God's creation and to move us to care for it. Young people today are leading the way in caring for our earth. Did you know, have you heard this in the news? I haven't. I had to do some research. That this October, a trial is set to be heard before the U.S. District Court Judge Ann Aiken in Eugene, Oregon. She's going to hear a case, a landmark case called Juliana versus the U.S., in which 21 courageous youth have filed a lawsuit against the United States government for its role in causing climate change and violating their rights to life, liberty, and property, while also failing to protect essential public resources. These youth range between the age of 10 and 21, and they filed this lawsuit. And their voices provoke a moment of moral reckoning in our nation. Now, according to their website, eachgeneration.org, their day in court is coming. It's not been thrown out. And now is the time for us as people of faith and people of conscience to speak out in solidarity. And as such, the United Church of Christ Council for Climate Justice, that's part of us, right, as a denomination. They have lent their support and encourage us to do so as well, to continue to spread the word that environmental justice is a matter of faith, and that caring for the earth is part of our faith and is a faith response for us. Now, friends, we don't have to sue the government of the United States in order to care for God's earth, but we have to do something. Just as Jesus is our good shepherd, our caretaker, we too are called to be caretakers. Caretakers of our brothers and sisters, yes, but caretakers of our earth. And as such, on this Earth Day, I invite you to share in a pledge. Now, there was an insert in your bulletin. Find that insert, dig it on out. It's on the back. It's also going to be on your screen. We got a magic screen back there. And this sheet, before we dive in, is spiritual practices to honor the earth. So I encourage you to read this over this week and maybe do one a day or do one a week or something like that. But take a look at it. It's got some great ideas to help us care for our earth. But I invite you to make this pledge now to live a little differently. So will you join me in the bold parts? You get to start first. We join with the earth and with each other to bring new life to the land, to restore the waters, to refresh the air. We join with the earth and with each other to renew the forests, to care for the plants, to protect the creatures. We join with the earth and with each other to celebrate the seas, to rejoice in the sunlight, to sing the song of the stars. We join with the earth and with each other to recreate the human community, to promote justice and peace, to remember our children. We join with the earth and with each other. We join with as many and diverse expressions of one loving mystery for the healing of the earth and the renewal of all life. And with that pledge, this Earth Day, let us remember that we are caretakers of each other, of our earth, and that we don't do it alone because Jesus cares for us first. Thanks be to God. Amen.